Okay, yesterday we talked about interest rates and compounding growth, making a bunch of money in the bank over a course of years. I want to review how to write that equation from this chart, and then today I want to show you what it looks like if it's decreasing, because things do decrease, they depreciate like cars usually. You buy a car from a brand new car from a parking lot, and that's the most it's ever going to be worth. You have your exceptions, but for the most part, cars go down in value as they get older. All right, here, what are we increasing by every time? Doubling. We're multiplying by 2. So y is going to be equal to x in the sky because it's exponential. It's doubling, so our rate of change is 2. And what was our starting point? 40. So it's 40 times 2 to the x. Now, how do you get a 2 from doubling? Because in the equation yesterday that I showed you, it was 40 times 1 plus the rate of change. So if the rate of change is 2, wouldn't that be a 3? That's where it can be a little confusing. And I get this question a lot every year, whether or not you've thought of that yet. You probably will eventually. So this has got to be a 1 for it to be that equation, because that equation is correct. How is that going to be a 1? Well, you got to think of it like this. If you're doubling, you're adding the full amount of what you had. What I mean is, here you had 40 and you went to 80. So you increased 100% of your amount. You increased by 40, 100% of 40. You went from 80 to 160. You increased 100% of your amount of 80. Here, 100% of 160 is 160. And that's how much you increase to get to 320, 100% of your amount. So you're increasing 100%. You're adding 100% to your original value. Remember, this 1 just represents your original value. And you're adding on another 100% of that. And then 1 plus 1 is 2. So that's how you get from this equation yesterday to here, the way that I taught you guys to set up this equation originally. So they are both the same thing. It's that right there that's tricky. Why am I putting a 1 there if I'm doubling it? That doesn't make sense. It's because that 1 counts as well. That's the original amount plus another original amount. That's how you double. All right, that might help you when we try and solve this one here. This is just the opposite. So now you're dividing by 2 every time. So this is going to be y is equal to x in the sky. And when you divide by 2, remember it's a fraction. It's 2 in the denominator. This is 2 in the numerator. When you have a whole number, it's over 1. 2 is in the numerator. Now 2 is in the denominator. That means to divide. Denominator to divide. And what was our starting point on this one? 320. So that's what the equation looks like on that one. Now, if we're setting it up this way, how do we get to 1/2? Well, we're not really going to, because when we set it up this way, we use decimals. We turn percents into decimals. So 1/2 is actually going to be 0.5. So this equation right here is going to give us 0.5. So it would look like this. Y is equal to 320 times 1 plus something, t. And whatever we put here is going to have to add with 1 to make 0.5. Because we know it has to be 1/2. All right, let's look at what we have here. We're dividing by 2. What are we decreasing by? We started at 320. We're taking away half of that, and we're ending up at 160. When you're at 160, half of 160 is 80, and that's how much we're taking away to get to 80. When you're at 80, half of 80 is 40, and we're taking away 40 to get to 40. So if I were to do another answer, it'd be 4 and 20. You'd take away half of 40. So we're decreasing by half. We're decreasing. That's one of the key words here. Decreasing. Whenever you're decreasing, this turns into a subtraction sign. Whenever you're increasing, it's a plus sign like we were doing yesterday. When you're decreasing, which is the type of problems you'll have today, that's going to be a subtraction sign. So you're decreasing by half. And what is half of something? It's 50% of something. You're decreasing by 50%, and to turn 50% into a decimal, you move it over twice and it becomes 0.5. So you've got 1 minus 0.5, and 1 minus 0.5 is 0.5. So you get 320 times 0.5 t. 1/2 is 0.5. So you can set up these equations the way I originally showed you, and you're going to get the same exact equation. It just might be a decimal instead of a fraction. 1 plus 1 is 2. 0.5 is 1/2. So this is not wrong. This is not wrong. It's just two different ways to look at it. This is basically always starting off with 1 and then adding or subtracting whatever you're increasing or decreasing. And you'll end up with the same number as if you did it the original way. So this is what it's going to look like today. It's actually going to be a little easier than this because they're not going to give you a bunch of tables. They're just going to tell you, they're going to start you right here. They're going to say you're decreasing by this percentage, 6%, 10%, 20%, whatever it is. They're going to tell you this number right here. So all you have to do is turn that number that they tell you into a decimal and subtract it from 1 to get to here. It's pretty simple. All right, so let me give you an example of what they might look like. This first one is an example from yesterday. A house increases 10% a year. I'm just making these numbers up, but in general, houses go up in value as the years go by. So if it increases 10% a year, let's say it was originally worth $200,000. So you'd have y is equal to 200,000, k stands for 1,000, times 1 plus 10% to the t, whatever, how many years you wanted to know what it was worth, you just plug that number in for t. So that's y equals 200k, 1 plus 0.1, move it twice, it's 0.1, and when you add 0.1 to 1, you get 1.1. Right now a car, the value of a car usually decreases, so it's going to be a subtraction sign instead of an addition sign. Let's say your car was worth $20,000 when you bought it. So now it's y equals 20k, 1 minus 10%, and that's going to be y is equal to 20k, 1 minus 0.1, which is 0.9. So before I let you go here, there's one thing I want you to notice. When you're decreasing, the number in your parentheses, your final number after you subtract it from 1, should be less than 1. If this number in your parentheses is less than 1, you're decreasing. Because now essentially you're saying take 90% of that value. If you're taking less than 100% of something, it's going to be smaller than what you started with. Say you start with 10. 90% of 10 is less than 10. 80% of 10 is less than 10. Any percentage under 100 or any decimal under 1 is less than your original amount. So that's what you should always end up with. If you're decreasing, something less than 1. If you're increasing, you should have something more than 1. And if you're staying exactly the same, it's just 1. You're adding 0% to it. You just have the original 1. So 1 is even. Anything above 1, you're increasing. Anything below 1, you're decreasing.